Warning: this creepypasta is made up and not real. It contains content that might not be suitable for younger audiences. If you get scared easily, do not watch this creepypasta. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you thought that the 2 lost episodes of Boohbah were horrible, there's another. I just finished graduating high school and I went to a banquet to have some food, just for the celebration of the ceremony. When I was walking out of the restaurant, my foot nearly stepped on a Boohbah DVD. The cover consisted of the Boohbahs flying around their world in an orange background, with Zumba being the closest. The DVD was titled Boohbah, Desert Island and More Boohbah Magic. "Looks interesting," I said. I then took the DVD home. When I came home, I showed my parents the DVD. Both my parents approved of me for finding a DVD as rare as this one. My parents then said they were going to go to the Telus Spark Center. I was left home alone to watch the DVD that I found. So I popped the DVD into my DVD player and turned on my TV. After putting the DVD in the DVD player, it showed the warning, the ABC DVD ident, and the ABC for Kids ident as normal. It then took me to the menu. The menu consisted of the Boohbahs flying around the Boozon, almost like the cover of the DVD. There were 4 episodes listed on the menu. They were Desert Island, Hot Dog, Big TV, and an unusual episode with the title Red Weed. I found that name to be familiar. I shrugged it off and proceeded to press play all. The first 3 episodes were good, but the last one was so messed up. Before the episode began, there was a warning. This lost episode of Boohbah was made to promote the 2005 Steven Spielberg movie War of the Worlds. This episode also prohibits children not to watch this episode as it contains content not suitable for children aged 0 to 5. Please watch at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised. "Oh great," I said in frustration. "Here it comes." The episode started. The sky was normal, but with a red tint applied to it. The ocean was also in an aqua green color. The child said, "Boohbah," as it normally would, but it had a bit of a reverb to it, as if it was played in a large gym. Then the boo ball emerged behind the ocean as it normally would. The boo ball then flew towards 2 children from the UK, despite looking at the sky with the tint of red. The children were still excited to see the boo ball. The boo ball then flew to 2 children from the US. They also didn't care about the sky with a tint of red. The boo ball landed on the green field like normal, but when it showed the logo, it was entirely different. The logo had the same color as the planet Mars, instead of the usual white. "This is really odd," I said. The Boohbahs then flew out of the boo ball like normal, but the Boohbahs' colors were darker and duller than their regular color, and they proceeded to do the beginning warm-up dance, regardless of their different fur colors. Kingba led the warm-up. They then suddenly started to do some sort of unnerving warm-up dance where they grew extra arms and legs. They started to crawl around like spiders. I got confused, but uncomfortable. When the Boohbahs did the unnerving dance way too fast, the rainbow wave wiped across the screen. But when the rainbow wave finished wiping past the Boohbahs, all of the white in the Boozon was in the color of Mars. The Boohbahs then retracted their heads and flew into the boo ball after their warm-up, and the present-giving segment started. The present was a small, thick, and wide present. There were 2 children. One of them was a blonde girl with a blue dress and pink shoes, and one was a brown-haired boy with a yellow shirt, gray sweatpants, and black sandals. The present went into the boo ball, and it was revealed to be some sort of flower pot with a red vine. Something seems familiar about this present, I said in concern. The children read out the story people's names as usual, and then it transitioned into the story world. The flower pot with the vines was then put on the sandy beach. "It's a red vine," said the story world narrator. Then, the Somebody's Coming theme played, but this time, it wasn't reversed. "Somebody's coming," said the narrator. Just then, Mr. Man, Mrs. Lady, Auntie, and little dog Fido appeared on screen. "It's Mr. Man, Mrs. Lady, Auntie, and little dog Fido," said the narrator. The group looked over at the flower pot with the red weed inside. They then started to inspect the red stuff before one of them started to speak. "What is this stuff?" asked Mr. Man.
"Well, according to my calculations," said Auntie, "this is a red weed. This is the type of plant that used to grow on the planet Mars. But now, since almost all of it was gone, the Martians now want to feast on the humans' blood so they can use it as fertilizer for this plant. And keep in mind that this plant can grow just as fast as ever." "Sounds like a lot of info," said the story world narrator. The group were trying to figure out what it was meant to do, but at that moment, the red weed started to grow and grow, faster and faster. The group and their dog started to run from the fast-growing weed. Just then, Boohbah! A lightning bolt hit the ground close to where the group was. The sound of the thunder made me jump a bit. Then another lightning strike. Then another. And another. Then there was a small hole in the ground. "That was a close one," the narrator said. The story people were wondering what was going on. At that moment, the ground began to shake. And all of a sudden, the sand began to sink, meaning there was cracks forming around. Just then, a mechanical foot came up out of the ground. Then a second. And a third. "Okay, this is getting really familiar," I said with a hint of nervousness. Then all of a sudden, 3 lights began to brighten up the scene. I knew what that thing was. The whole machine was revealed. It was none other than a tripod. Now I knew why this promoted that Steven Spielberg movie. The group stumbled back at that sheer size of this 43-meter tall machine. The tripod then let out its deafening loud howl, and a small bit of its poisonous black smoke came out from below the underside. Then it slowly unfolded its heat ray guns. The story people and their dog then made a run for it. The tripod then shot its heat rays at the story people. The tripod began to slowly walk closer to the group and continued to fire its deadly rays. The 3 story people then ran to the side to seek shelter. Little dog Fido was left on his own to run for his life. Just then, one of the long tentacles grabbed the poor Jack Russell Terrier, and then one of its bloodsucker tentacles came down and struck the little dog on his side. The 3 story people then realized that they were going to use his blood as fertilizer for the red weed. Then after the bloodsucker was done sucking all of the blood off of little dog Fido, it then showed the most heartbreaking scene of this episode. The dog's skin was all pale, and there was a huge hole on the side of his body of where the bloodsucker dug into. The 3 story people then made another run from the tripod. The machine then looked over and then began to shoot at the trio with the guns. Again. "This isn't good," said the narrator. Story people screamed and screamed and screamed. The 3 story people then had the idea to split up and hide so that they won't get killed by the tripod's heat rays.
which was a ridiculously stupid decision considering that that's what most horror movies do. Mr. Man, Mrs. Lady, and Auntie went to hide in different places on the beach. Mr. Man hid behind a pine tree and watched as the tripod chased after the other two remaining story people. Mrs. Lady hid behind a large rock and proceeded to hide from it as well, leaving Auntie behind. The tripod then started to chase after Auntie instead. The tripod was still shooting the heat rays at her, but they kept missing her. Just then, while Auntie was still running from the tripod fighting machine, a familiar figure landed in front of Auntie, causing her to fall back in terror. The figure was none other than Kingba from the other two lost episodes. "Greetings, Auntie," said Kingba. "Ah! Who are you?" asked Auntie in fright. "The name is Kingba," he said, "and me and my Martian friends are going to kill you all." "What?" exclaimed Auntie. "So you're helping these Martians take over the world and help this red wheat plant grow all over the whole planet?" "Why, yes," said Kingba with a sinister tone. "Anyway, enough waiting around. Martians, kill her." The tripod then aimed its heat rays. Auntie then screamed. Then the tripod shot Auntie with its heat rays. Auntie was then vaporized to death. Then it showed Mrs. Lady peeking behind the rock, watching the whole thing happen. "Oh no, what am I going to do?" asked Mrs. Lady in a frightened tone. "I don't know," said the story world narrator. "You have to run for your life now." Mrs. Lady then got off from behind a rock and began to run for her life. The tripod then turned around and saw Mrs. Lady running for her life. The tripod began to chase her next. Kingba also joined in on chasing her down. Mrs. Lady tried to run as fast as she can, but one of the tripod's robot tentacle arms grabbed Mrs. Lady and lifted her up into the air. Kingba then flew into view. "Gotcha, slowpoke," Kingba said tauntingly. Kingba's eyes began to glow red and white again, and he shot Mrs. Lady in the face with his laser vision. Mrs. Lady's face began to melt as Kingba kept on shooting his laser vision. After Mrs. Lady's face was completely melted, the tripod's robot tentacle arm lets her go and her dead body falls down towards the ground. The camera cut to Mr. Man still hiding behind the pine tree. He then tried to sneak out from the pine tree that he was hiding at, and then run from the machine to find a different hiding place. The camera then cut to a POV of him trying to sneak away from the tripod machine. Suddenly, Kingba teleported right in front of Mr. Man's face, almost like a jump scare. Mr. Man screamed and fell back in terror. "Going somewhere, Baldy?" asked Kingba as he confronted Mr. Man. "Call me that one more time and I'll punch you in the face!" yelled Mr. Man. "In your dreams, punk," Kingba replied. Kingba then grabbed Mr. Man by the neck and started to strangle him. Mr. Man started to choke as that happened. "You're weak. There's nothing left that you could do to stop me and my Martian friends," said Kingba. Mr. Man then started to talk through his chokes. "Just wait until I get my hands on you, you villain! I will call the cops on you and we'll have you executed if you're..." Mr. Man's sentence was interrupted by Kingba tossing him into the air. The tripod then aimed its heat rays and shot Mr. Man. The three remaining Storyworld people were now considered dead. "Well, it looks like our work here is done," said Kingba. "But there's still more things that we need to do. Let's go." Then it showed a far shot of both Kingba flying and the tripod walking away. The camera slowly zoomed out. "Goodbye," said the Storyworld narrator in a depressed tone. When it was transitioning to the final segment, the children were once again crying. Obviously because the story world segment was depressing and very violent. Then it showed the Boohbahs dancing. They were performing one of my favorite dances, Sneak Up and Surprise Out. Just when the dance was almost over, one of the Boohbahs, Zing Zing Zingba, tripped over something red. They all looked down and it was the red weed from earlier.
It is somehow growing inside of the Boozon, and it was even growing in the present-giving area. Suddenly, they heard loud mechanical footsteps. The Boohbahs were looking around to see where the footsteps were coming from. The footsteps grew louder and louder, and the Boohbahs then huddled up together in fright. While all of that was happening, just then, the same tripod howl was heard again, and then there was the sound of something breaking. Pieces of the Boozon began to fall and shatter onto the ground into millions of pieces. The Boohbahs then quickly turned around, and the camera panned up to show the same tripod from earlier. At that moment, Kingba flew into view and greeted the 5 Boohbahs in a sinister manner. "Hello, little furry Boohbahs," greeted Kingba. "As you can see, not only do I associate with Darth Tubby, but I also associate with the Martians on destroying the world and kill every living being on the planet." The Boohbah's pupils shrank again. The Boohbahs then flew away to try and escape out of the Boozon to get away from Kingba and the tripod fighting machine. The tripod then shot its heat rays at the Boohbahs. The Boohbahs that got vaporized were Zing Zing Zingba, Humba, and Zumba. The heat rays also destroyed most of the Boozon. Some of the large orbs were sliced in half. Jumba and Jingba were the 2 remaining Boohbahs that were hiding behind the largest orb they could find. Kingba then teleported behind the 2 Boohbahs and shot both of them with his ray gun. "Success!" said Kingba with triumph. He then saluted to the Martians and the tripod, and the tripod gave off one more howl before it left to destroy the rest of all living things. Then Kingba then dropped to the ground. He then grabbed out a bottle of gasoline and started to pour it all over the area where the Boohbahs do their warm-up and ending dances. After he was done pouring all the gasoline, Kingba grabbed out a match and ignited it. He then threw the match on the ground, and the whole dancing area caught fire. Kingba watches as everything began to burn. Then the rainbow wave splashed past Kingba, and the same reverbed "Boohbah" came back. Then everything in the Boozon began to get sucked up into the Boo Ball. Kingba then flew away from the dancing area, which was still on fire. And then Kingba went inside of the Boo Ball and hijacked it again. Once all the energy was in the Boo Ball, except for the red weed since it was spreading across the grassy hill, the Boo Ball flew off into the sky. The credits rolled, but once again, there was no music, just the sound of the ocean. Then it showed the Ragdoll logo, and the same exact screeching sound came back when the logo's mouth was drawn. Then it showed the same red-tinted ABC DVD logo. But when the DVD logo zoomed in, the whoosh was overlapped with the tripod's howl. It took me back to the menu. I was more scared than ever. I then ejected the DVD and threw it in the trash. I then contacted Rowan and told him about the episode. He was pretty shocked about it too. He then said this to me. "Remember that guy named Ted Morgan? The person who made those 4 horrible Teletubbies episodes? Well, I just found out that he is the same guy who made those 2 lost episodes of Boohbah. Even the one you saw. Stupid jerk Ted Morgan is, I thought to myself. After Rowan and I hung up the call, I then saw my mom pull up into the driveway. I told her all about what I saw. After I played the episode a second time, she was more shocked than me. I then told her I threw it into the trash. If you find a Boohbah DVD that contains a lost episode, never bring it home and never watch it.